So I'm going to get started here, and Laura and I are going to tag team just a little bit about our agenda. We're going to give you, we all did introductions. I'll share a little bit more about myself. I'm a cultural anthropologist at heart, and I grew up living abroad and got the travel bug at an early age. My dad was in the Foreign Service and started global family travels in 2010. And actually, the first trip we ever did was to Ladakh, India. So it's a place that's really near and dear to me, as is the Siddhartha School. So we're going to talk about a little bit of the history of Ladakh, Buddhism, and some of the, obviously, the old Silk Road, the culture and the people. And then we'll dig into our itinerary and, of course, share a little bit about the school, the Siddhartha School. And I'm going to actually share a little bit about the water crisis that is, actually India in general is facing, because we want to take a look at that when we visit, and then some acclimatization, and of course we can't not talk about travel and address COVID, so talk about that, and then also chat about next steps as well for booking the trip. A little bit about global family travels. We align a lot of our trips around three travel pillars of learn, serve, and immerse. Learn, obviously, when you travel, you learn so much about the history and culture of the destination, the natural environment, and we like to take a look at some of the community challenges and global issues. And also, you step outside of your comfort zone, and sometimes it becomes transformational, and learn something about yourself as well. Because of the nature by which we partner with nonprofit organizations, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we have community engagement and serve as one of the pillars, because we really believe in how do we serve the destination, and how do we look at working together side by side, whether it's a volunteer project or just contributing to something meaningful in the destination with the host partner. And because of the nature by which we do work with nonprofits or community leaders, the trip is authentically immersive in really looking at some of the communities, the cultural norms, and allowing us to really dig deep into the destinations. So most of our trips, we partner with nonprofit organizations, and the Siddhartha School is one of them. And so there are some extra layers of doing due diligence around the nonprofits and how they serve the community. And this allows us to actually, we align a lot of our trips around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are 17 goals, and the ultimate goal is to alleviate poverty. So in Ladakh, I'll chat a little bit about what we're doing there, but really addressing quality education and access to clean water. So little first slide here, talking about our trip, is basically it's mid-July. I really feel honored that the Siddhartha School, the new executive director, reached out to me about a month and a half ago and said, we're finally going to do our 25th, have our 25th celebration of the school, and we'd love you to put together a trip that aligns with the time of this celebration. So the dates are July 10th through the 20th, and we are adding some other kind of pre or post experiences that I could chat about at the end of this, if you want to stay longer, and talk about the price at the end too. But these are the dates, and the trip is really a journey of cultural immersion, highlighting cultural heritage, looking at craft workshops, and basically, becoming immersed in the little village of Stoke, where the Siddhartha School is located. I'm actually going to hand the mic over to Laura, who will talk about the history of Ladakh and some of the culture and the art and Siddhartha School. And I'll navigate the slides for you, Laura.
Sure. So Ladakh, as you can see from the map, you can understand why it's been known historically as the Crossroads of High Asia. It was a stop along the Silk Road. although there were many silk routes, it was one of the places that merchants would travel through. And along with merchants, you would have pilgrims and monks and a variety of people who would make this incredible journey. And in the 1970s, India decided to open up this area, which is along what's called the contested line of control, which would be the borders of China and Pakistan. There's some argument there about, what who's this, what, and but Ladakh is a safe place to travel to, and even though there were travelers in the last century going through Ladakh from the west prior to the 70s, that's when India officially opened it to tourism. And I remember when I first started going to Ladakh, the majority of the travelers that were coming there in the late 70s and early 80s were Europeans who were interested in climbing, trekking. There were some Buddhist pilgrim type folks interested, some academics, and generally the average domestic tourist, Indian tourist, thought that the place was freezing cold all the time. And they didn't know that in the summer, it can be the ideal place to go because you can escape all of that horrible Indian heat and humidity. With global warming, the temperature has increased in Ladakh a bit in the summer, but it's still quite, comfortable as compared to, say, Delhi, where we would be on the first day. So that's why we're going at the time that we're going, and that's the traditional season. That's when Ladakh is greenest. It was an outpost for the British during colonialism, so they planted a lot of trees, which you can still see, those popular trees that are in the first picture in the slide there. So as a stop along the Silk Road, you've got this incredible melange of influences, whereas in the guidebooks, it gets described as a remote place that wasn't open until the 70s. That's just really not true. There have been travelers going through there for centuries, and those travelers are from Iran, and they were Manichaeans, and they were Jews, and they were Nestorian Christians, and they were Muslims, and they were Chinese, and they were coming from the southern parts of India as well, and there were Europeans. In fact, there were Germans who were missionaries. The Moravians came through there at the turn of the century, and had set up and brought things like potatoes up to the area. One of the Germans who had resettled there wrote the first Ladakhi dictionary with the help of a local Ladakhi scholar. So it's a very rich place. It's a very cosmopolitan place. And that's what I'll be emphasizing when we go to places like Alchi, which is a fantastic destination site for appreciating just this being a convergence of so many different cultural influences. The dating of Alchi as a temple site is a bit contested, but we could say probably around the 11th century. And unlike a lot of the later monasteries that were built in Ladakh that are up high on peaks, and we will get winded getting to, Alchi is in a lowland, and you don't have to climb up to get to it. So you can imagine merchant caravans coming, parking their horses and their camels in town and going to the temples for blessing. And they wouldn't be Buddhist pilgrims necessarily, but they would need whatever blessing they could receive for their journey, which many people would die along these journeys and be gone for years. So I just kind of went on and on about it. But where are we now, Jennifer?
Well, I'm just showing some pictures as you're talking. Yeah. So I just some of the imagery of maybe talk about the Buddhist influence a little bit too.
Yeah. So, and the other interesting thing is, you know, Ladakh is probably one of the last places on earth where you have an unbroken Buddhist tradition. So Buddhism, we think about Tibetan Buddhism when we think about this area, and that's what you're going to see the majority of. However, Buddhism was flourishing there before Tibetan Buddhism was even a thing. The Tibetans became Buddhists late in the game compared with India. And you had the first Tibetan king who adopted Buddhism as the court religion in the 7th century, and then there was some aversion to that within the nobility, and on and off it kind of went back to the prior tradition, and then Buddhism would have a resurgence again, and Ladakh would be a source of refuge because it was a long-standing Buddhist community that Tibetan Buddhists could flee to, or young monks could flee to. And it was also a place that some of these Tibetan folks who were interested in becoming monks early on could go through and would pass through. You know, you had a local, what has been described as the shamanistic tradition there. You had Muslims there, and Hindus and Buddhists there. So, in so much, Buddhism is a very pragmatic religion. So you've got a lot of local flavor adopted by Tibetan Buddhists. They've absorbed some what you might describe as like older traditions that were from the Buddhism before Tibetan Buddhism. So that can be really interesting when you look at art and culture. One of the places that we'll visit, the Ladakh Arts and Media Organization, really talks about this, the earliest nobility were court musicians in later days, and they had a form of Buddhism that was older than Tibetan Buddhism. So it's a long-standing place for Buddhist kingdoms. And that, you know, it was the place where Khenja Rinpoche, the abbot who was the former abbot of Tashi-Lhunpo Monastery. He was born and raised in Stoke, where we'll be based. And he founded a school after he became one of the first Ladakhi Buddhist monks to come to the United States, learn English at one of the oldest Tibetan Buddhist study centers in the United States, which is in, of all places, Washington, New Jersey. And it was founded by a Kalmuk monk. And one of the first places where His Holiness the Dalai Lama would come to stay in the United States. The school started in a rented room with that was basically abandoned, but we would pay a small amount for rent for the year. And we had one teacher and 20 students, and we grew to over 400 students, and we graduate some of the most successful young people, not only in the community of Ladakh, but in the whole state of Jammu and Kashmir. We have students who have gone on to have master's degrees from Indian universities in things like media and engineering and now medicine. And also we have graduates have gone on to do graduate school in Johns Hopkins University and University of Pennsylvania. So it's a school with a great track record and success. And I think a large part of that is due to the fact that from the beginning, it's been Ladakhi led, and companies and folks like Jennifer and Jeannie and many people around the world who meet Rinpoche help him. And because he's had the opportunity to travel so many places, unlike some of the monks that have really stayed only in India, he's really developed through the spirit of collaboration, a place that is preparing well students for the incredible amount of change that the area has been experiencing since that time in the 70s that I described to you. So
thank you, Laura. Your work has been so tremendous, and you've been played a big part of the success of the Siddhartha School. So thank you. It's an amazing school. And I have to say, I've been working in Ladakh, well, since 2010, and just the what the school does for the children there, providing them and preserving their heritage, as well as providing the quality education, has been, it's a successful recipe. And I think it's a great opportunity for, if you haven't been there, to learn more about the school as a traveler as well. I want to share a little bit about our first trip to Ladakh, but I also want to share my own personal connection to the Siddhartha School. Is actually the first student my family sponsored was Stanzin Safal. He graduated in 2019. I actually was in Ladakh in October of 2019, right before the pandemic hit, and had the opportunity to actually celebrate my birthday there and see his family. And he had just graduated. This is my family visiting Ladakh, and the hats that his family had made mine. So the connections that we make through travel, our tagline is expand your family circle. And when you visit Stoke and meet the people there, it is just such a joy. This is actually, you can see him growing older there, his family. So it's one of the opportunities to support quality education in this region. The other thing, the first trip we ever did to Ladakh, actually, I went to Bates College in Maine, and my college friend now is a Buddhist nun, and her name is, at the time was Lisa, but now is Tenzin Dassel. And Lisa, when I started my business, said, "Oh, you should come to Ladakh." And we did a village cleanup with our group of travelers and filled 30 garbage bags in this small village of Stoke with the students. And we used digital cameras and taught the kids how to use the cameras. And at the time, well, there weren't a lot of waste bins in some of the little shops, and everyone, it's a trekking village, so a lot of trekkers just threw their wrappers and bottles in the running streams. So we did, filled quite a lot of bags of garbage, and we buried the garbage on the school grounds. And some of the older school students wrote a zero trash policy, presented that zero trash policy to the village elders. And Laura, you've probably seen this, but it's really all with waste bins at every single little village shop, and it's much more pristine. And but I can't. There have been a lot of travelers there in the last couple of years, so I don't know what it will be like when we go this summer. But it's been remarkable to see what transpired in the aftermath of our trip there. So I wanted to address another sort of a crisis that's everywhere on our planet, obviously climate change, but how it's affecting the water issues. Water in Ladakh has long been a valued and scarce resource. And Ladakhis rely almost entirely on glacial and permafrost melt for water. So in recent years, glaciers, there have been a lot of water shortages because, obviously with climate change and all of that. So actually, some of these trekking villages even shut down their trekking businesses due to the water shortage. At least in 2019 they had. So this warming climate is making water supplies, more unpredictable throughout the Himalayan region. So I just believe it's an important thing to look at as a traveler when we go to a place. Let's dig into some of these global issues. So we have the opportunity to do that with, actually, this is a photo I took in 2010. But tourism is growing, and with growth and development, there's compromise to sustainability. I mean, the number of visitors to Ladakh, at least in 2019, it rose. I think increased by fourfold to like almost 500,000. So that challenge with the water resources has put a lot of demand on the water. So we're going to learn a little bit about that on our trip as well, and what we can do as travelers to mitigate or at least be aware of the water issues. I want to talk a little bit about the climate in July. And I know some of you have been there, but New Delhi right now is, I think, Laura, you said it was 47 degrees Celsius, which is like 100 and something right now, which is, mid-May. So in July, I suspect it will be equally as hot and humid. So unfortunately, some of our activities in Delhi will have to probably be indoors based on the at least the first couple of days. We will offer some other activities outside of this trip if you're interested in going to Agra or Taj Mahal and haven't been yet. But at least the first day before we go to Leh, and we want travelers to be well rested and not, be melting from the heat. So before you go to Ladakh and acclimatize. So here's a graph. The weather in Leh is perfect in July. It's like 75 degrees and very, very lovely. So I just wanted to kind of show you a little bit about the temperature before we dig into the itinerary. And Laura, I'm going to hand it back over to you to have you talk about Laura actually did this trip, The Art of the Silk Road, in 2019 with travelers. So some of the activities are similar, so you can chat a little bit about
2018.
Oh, 18. Yes, 18.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a great trip. People had a wonderful time. And the first day when we were in Delhi, because you really it's still kind of, even though the flights to Ladakh from Delhi leave daily, you need to allow for there to be cancellations due to weather all the time. So it's always good, rather than just assuming that you can fly right in and then make that connecting flight. There's always a 6-hour layover at least anyway before the flights leave in the morning, and they'll only leave in the morning because that's when visibility and winds are good. Because basically you're going straight up and you're not descending, you just kind of land. So you need to really allow for that extra day in Delhi. So even though it's going to be really hot, it's the wisest thing to do, and we're going to make the best of it. What we did last time, and I suggest it for this time, is we go to this fabulous contemporary art gallery, Triveni Kala Sangam, which is really interesting and important, I think, to remind people before they go on this cultural heritage focus, to recognize that culture is ongoing, and Indian culture and the culture along the Trans-Himalaya is ongoing and always changing and evolving. It's part of what makes it so strong and vibrant. And you have a lot of interest in the area that we're going among the artists and intelligentsia of Delhi and Mumbai and these sorts of places. It's very popular in the current imagination. And so when we were there last time, we went to 3 different shows. We saw a fabulous show by a famous Russian painter and theosophical mystic, Nicholas Roerich. His paintings of the Himalayas, and some were sites in Ladakh. That was there on display, and that was incredible. And then we saw a contemporary Indian painters who is fascinated with horse racing, who did these incredibly energetic paintings and drawings of racing horses and things. And I was sending pictures of them up to Ladakh to our host, Angdu, who has the hotel where we'll be staying. He was like, oh, I would really like to talk to this artist about maybe getting some of this work for our hotel. So it was a fun place to go. We had time, it was air conditioned. We also got to see a bit of an Indian dance performance, because this is an all around art center, not just a gallery. There were dance classes going on and different things. And then I have a keen interest in textiles, and it's a part of what we'll be seeing, as a destination on the Silk Road. So I'm always really keen to go to one of the cottage emporiums that is air conditioned, either in Connaught Place or another part of Delhi, where we can go from like booth to booth and see different regions of India, the traditional textile techniques. And it's an opportunity to shop if you want to shop, and you can learn a little bit more, and we can kind of go at our own pace. And then the nice thing is that our host in Delhi, it also has a studio workshop where she has artisans who are working on her textiles and clothing line, and she'll be hosting us for dinner at her home, which was fabulous. We got to sit with them. They're a Sikh family, and we had a wonderful meal together, family dinner, very much in line with Global Family Travel's philosophy. So,
thank you, Laura. Yeah, Roma and Lokesh are both in the travel industry, and they actually work for two different companies, but I've known them for a long time, and I thought it was really lovely that they opened up their home for us. So that's a very special opportunity.
It's great.
So I'll chat about the next day. The next day is all about acclimatizing and traveling to Ladakh. We normally take off fairly early, like an 8:30 flight, just to give us the whole day to rest and relax once we get to Leh. It's a 1-hour flight, and incredible views. You won't want to stay in your airplane seat, looking out the windows as you travel there. We'll be met at the airport and taken to Stoke, where the school, Siddhartha School, is located. That's the photograph there on the left side that I took from the window of the village as we flew over it. And then spend the rest of the day, it's being at that altitude. I don't know if you've experienced that before, but you'll be sleepy, you'll be drinking a lot of water, and you take a nap. So it's just a really day of really acclimatizing. And we will have a pre-departure meeting to talk about more about acclimatization and all of the things you can do to make sure you're hydrated and rested for getting to that altitude.
And I'll just add, it's important to take it seriously, because I've hosted many groups, and if you don't slow down first, you won't be able to speed up and really get to see and do and enjoy the things that Ladakh has to offer. So that means drinking a ton of water, more than you could ever imagine you could drink, and to really be stationary that first day as much as possible and rest.
Yeah, thank you. And we will definitely go through all of this slide. You will see it again. If you're on this trip, it won't be the first time. So Laura, why don't you chat a little bit about Stoke Village? I mean, you've been going there a lot longer than I have, and it's my favorite place on the planet. See that photo that's behind me?
Yeah. Well, it's really it's a magical place in that it's distinguished in comparison to some of the other villages that are around Leh, which is really the district center. Leh is where the palace is, but the king and the queen had a palace in Stoke as well. And they chose it because it's such a beautiful area. Khenja Rinpoche would tell me stories of when he was a boy, he would go walk up to where the school was, and that's where he would take his goats and sheep and cows to graze, and it was filled with grass. Now, when you go to the school, now you see that it is just completely barren and brown. There's a lot of greenery projects that happen all the time, but there's really just not enough water. And when you see the pictures that Jennifer has of the mountains, when I first started going there this time of year, all of those mountain peaks were snow-capped. And you'd have to wear a winter jacket parts of the day. And now it's warmer and the snow-capped peaks are gone. And if you talk to the people, you know, in Stoke and in surrounding villages, they're all very cognizant of this water issue. And part of it is you know, a source of anxiety because they recognize that that things are just so out of balance. And it's really easy for them to look at it in those kinds of terms and know that something wrong, but really take it upon themselves and to think that it's their behavior that is causing this suffering. And we'll be meeting some of the younger Ladakhis who are talking to the older people about global warming and the science behind it, and the fact that this is really you know, an interconnected you know, global village that we're dealing with, where, you know, we have an incredible you know, issue with being out of balance and out of harmony with the earth, and that it's not their fault. And so, yeah, I mean, in Stoke in particular, there was always that water that would run down from the streams that you'd go by a house one day and they wouldn't have any water, and then someone would move a stone so that it was their turn and their water would go off and irrigate their fields. And they actually had a very complicated but workable sharing system. And that is starting to deteriorate as places are changing, and the government has really encouraged the deterioration of polyandry. So when I first started going, most families had a woman in the house with 2 husbands and a very large family that would help to take care of all the fields and the farming. And this worked very well to stay in balance, because if everybody had gone off and had their own nuclear families, the environment would not be able to sustain that kind of growth. So it was their way to keep their growth in check while still having the size of family that you needed to be agricultural. So now when you go around Leh and you even go around Stoke, you'll see there's so much building in comparison to some of the smaller villages that we might see when we're on our way to Alchi, you know, for example. And people have cars now, and they didn't used to have cars, and they have prepackaged foods. And I think that contributes a lot to the garbage issue. That wasn't something that they were dealing with before. Everything was perfectly organic and practical and biodegradable. And now, you know, kids have candy and, you know, all that stuff, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and Laura, we will in Stoke, they still have the Choprin system, you know, that we'll be able to witness that that sharing of the water resources, and I guess they alternate who the water guardian is. So we're going to learn a little bit about that too, which it's just I mean, I know they're trying to preserve that in the face of modernization, and you know, so that'll be part of it. But.
Yeah, you see in the corner of the screen on the left, that's Amdu, who you'll meet soon. He was one of the original board members for the Siddhartha School and is the longest standing board member of this school. And he met Ken Rinpoche, you know, when they were children growing up together in Stoke, and they also taught school together in the 70s. And Rinpoche walked to Tibet with his father and became a monk at Tashi Lompo Monastery in Tibet, and then fled Tibet during the Cultural Revolution because Ladakh is a part of India. He was able to argue that he actually wanted to go back to Ladakh to tell them what a good job the Chinese were doing. He would say, Laura, that was my one big lie. But they didn't know what to do with the Ladakhi monks because they were seen as not Tibetan, and they wanted, you know, to figure that out. And so he was able to go back, and that's when he decided it was just crucial that he do something long-term to help, you know, the continuation of Tibetan Buddhist culture. So from place to place in the Himalayas, in these areas, there may be a local flavor to Tibetan Buddhist culture. So Ladakh has a particular flavor, and they have a particular way of speaking the language and customs. They don't say Tashi Delik when they say hello, they say Julay. You know,
and Laura, I just wanted to mention one thing, that that their language now has been recognized as an official language by the Indian government.
Did it get officially recognized? I know that they put in their petition for it, but it hadn't been approved yet.
I thought it was approved.
I don't know about that. I'll have to check.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Chiska would have told me.
Oh, maybe then what I saw was that they had agreed that the petition would go in. But I would be interested.
Yeah, Ladakh became a new territory state of India in 2019. So that, I mean,
right. Well, when I first started going there, there were signs up on the walls, graffiti, that would say "Free Ladakh from Kashmir," because Ladakh was part of what's called the Jammu and Kashmir state. And it was just felt very different. They felt very different from the rest of that state. You know, where you had Hindus and Muslims mostly in Chandigarh and Srinagar, and you know, other issues. And so they're very happy to be a part, to have their own state. However, the caveat to that is they don't have any voting rights in Congress right now.
Yeah, I mean, the good and the bad part about it is there's a lot more infrastructure being built now, like transportation and roads, which, you know, is there are pros and cons to that, right? Anyway, let's get back to we might want to just I'm just thinking about our day, the third day we're in Stoke. Yeah, but there's so many things to share about Ladakh and Stoke, but we'll basically, some people might be continuing to acclimatize, so we're going to kind of have a slow day in Stoke, you know, visiting you know, what Laura mentioned, the Stoke Palace, and there's all kinds of precious heirlooms and prayer instruments and materials and very old 16th century tankas. So there's a lot to see at Stoke Palace. And then there's a lovely heritage home. It's owned by a family. I think they're related to Rinpoche. Laura, you might remind me, but I think that half the village is related to each other. So anyways, we'll have lunch there and learn more about, they'll go up into their, it's not a kitchen that's used anymore, but the old Ladakhi kitchen that, you know, learn about some of the kitchen accessories there. And then just a little bit of one of my favorite places in the village is this the new Buddha that was built in 2014, and His Holiness blessed it in 2015. So it was built by some army members, I believe, in the village, and so it's a really beautiful place and a little monastery inside of the big Buddha there. One of our travelers caught this halo around the Buddha's head, so I had to include that. So that day will be all about learning about village life and culture in Stoke. And then the next day.
The one thing that's cool about that too is that I was there when the army guys went to visit Rinpoche to ask for his blessing to build this statue. And these were guys who had fought in the Indo-Pakistan War. They had dug in trenches in the glaciers, and they were looking at this as a merit-making activity and also to clear away some of the karma from, their past as soldiers. So in looking at the art historical tradition, these are some of the motivations behind, creating temples and building statues and painting tankas and things. And it's important to have that orientation, I think, as we're going along and looking at things.
Yeah, and the art inside of it was just exquisite too. Yeah. So Laura, I know you've worked with LAMO for a long time. Maybe you can say a few words about their good work in preserving Ladakhi heritage and culture.
Yeah, I mean, they're a fantastic place. They were started by Manisha Ahmad and Ravina Agarwal in the 90s, and they wanted to create a space where Ladakhi people, young and old, could meet and celebrate Ladakhi culture, and also a place where there could be contemporary discussions that weren't so restraining and always about how to be like the past, but how to approach the future and make choices about all sorts of things, whether it's how they're going to tell their stories, or were they going to publish stories, or were they going to have art exhibits, and all sorts of fantastic things go on there. And it's a vibrant place. It's a socially so significant of a place. It's hard to know, the influence that it has is just so extensive. They offer workshops to children at various schools, including Siddhartha School, like projects where kids paint their local heroes and then have an exhibition. And then they have international exhibitions with European or American artists who show and then do a month-long studio where they paint alongside of Ladakhi painters, many of which who are working with materials that we would recognize and doing things that are not tanka paintings at all, but much more influenced by a Western art historical tradition. But there's always that fusion that to me is quintessentially Ladakhi, that there's always this eagerness to take on influences from other places and incorporate what makes sense and revitalize the culture. So there's a real renaissance in Ladakhi art right now, and LAMO is really at the hub of it. And LAMO stands for Ladakh Arts and Media Organization, but it's also a wink to LAMO, which is the patron, wrathful protector, female goddess who protects the Dalai Lamas and is revered in Ladakhi Buddhist culture.
Ah, I never knew that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really interesting, the last time I visited LAMO was when I went to Ladakh in 2019, and they had just finished doing a survey in the city about the water crisis as well. So they will do a heritage walk, but also learn, visit the museum, but also learn a little bit about their work connecting, preserving the culture, but also preserving the environment as well. So that'll be a day of, cultural heritage and natural heritage. And then we'll also, one of the, actually he's on the local board as well. Sorry, his name, Laura's escaping me, the alleged.
Yeshe.
Yeah.
He's he is one of the trailblazers for the new Ladakhi education movement that really sprung up in the 60s, and he started the first private Ladakhi Buddhist school with a group of other social Ladakhi activists. And when Rinpoche started the Siddhartha School later, he was so significant in advising and then joining the board to guide us. But now he is the new executive director of the Ladakh Ecological Development Center, which, when you're reading about Ladakh, Helena Norberg Hodge, a anthropologist who's done a significant amount of work in Ladakh, this was her nonprofit NGO that she started with a Ladakhi scholar. And I can't remember his name offhand, but you know, he was Ladakhi and who helped write the Tibetan, the Ladakhi dictionary, and has really been the historian for Ladakh. So when she retired, he took over this now.
Martin, did you have a question?
Yeah, years ago, I was reading something about the rapid deterioration of the historic structures and buildings.
That's right.
And, you know, it came to mind now, looking not only at these pictures, but hearing you, I'm wondering if these people are also involved with that, or is that somebody else?
They are. So Lamo, one of the things that they did was they took over Munshi House, which if you go back a slide, so the palace is right there in the middle, and then all of the services that would be needed by the king and the royal family, like the treasury and the blacksmith and all of those things, and the artisans, they all had were part of a royal village right below the palace. And they took one of the most important structures there that's in that red box, and they completely restored it and wrote about it, and influenced a lot of other preservation that has gone on since then. So I mean,
and we get to also tour this little area here.
We do, and that's part of the tour that we're going to get, where we're taken by the executive director of LAMO through this historical part of what they call Old Lay, which is the the activity around the palace. We go to the buildings. He talks about specific families that live there. They've done extensive research. It's probably the most fascinating and hyper local parts of the tour that is completely guided by one of the most well-researched and educated Ladakhis.
Wonderful.
And stop.
Yeah, no, it's a great walk. So it's a pretty full day. I mean, learning about cultural heritage, and the other option is the palace up above. At the end of the day, it's nice to go up and have that view, and tour that palace itself too. So that will also be
at the end of the day. And then it's a little bit cooler, and then you have the common prayer and
and there is a mosque in town too, which you hear the called prayer several times a day. It's a very multi-ethnic town, Leh is, and you can't not go to Leh without doing shopping as well. So there's time for shopping, and we'll have lunch in the old town as well. So that'll be a full day in Leh there. I'm going to fast forward to the next day, which is all about the Siddhartha School. And I don't actually have the full details, but Laura and I suspect that the celebrations will be in the afternoon, since the kids, they all have to get ready. And last time, these are photos from the inauguration of the multipurpose hall, which was 2018. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that was a beautiful.
They'll do a performance, they'll do dancing, and there will be some, people recognized, and the kids really get into it, and they work so hard, and you're right there with the parents, and key people from the local community as a part of their community. And
yeah, and I'm sure they have something very special planned for visitors. Yeah. And Rinpoche normally does a blessing, which is we'll probably have that as well. So that's a very culturally immersive day at the school. And then the other option for those of you who have not been to Ladakh, we have offer a morning visit to Hemis Monastery. And Laura, since you're the art historian, I'll pass the mic back to you to chat about Hemis.
Yeah, Hemis is one of the oldest major monasteries in the area. It's Kagyu, which is one of the 4 sects of Tibetan Buddhism, and it's probably the richest monastery in all of Ladakh, and the most powerful. And it's got a fantastic museum. So if you're an art history buff, you'll see some very rare bronzes that are part of the Kashmiri Buddhist style. There are very few pieces left, in art history. Yeah, the fact that we're going to be able to see some of that is really fabulous. And they've done a lot of really good work to present their collection. And we have a relationship with the monastery's treasurer, who, if we're lucky, will take us to tea, and we'll get to visit some places behind the scenes at this very active and busy monastery and museum.
Yeah, thank you. While we're chatting about monasteries, I'm switching gears to the next day, and the Gelug, the Yellow Hats, the Tiksay Monastery. And Laura, do you want to say a few words about Tiksay as well?
Yeah, Tiksay is a beautiful monastery, and it's part of the Gelug tradition. So Khenje Rinpoche, who's also from the Gelugpa tradition, has a nice relationship with their Rinpoche there. We'll go and visit. They have an incredible main temple hall with ancient thangkas, and a room filled with Tibetan statues that are all portraying the 21 Taras, which is a Tibetan Buddhist goddess, female Buddha deity. And we'll go into the courtyard, which is where we would see religious dances if we were there when those were going on. And it's also a part, I think, Jennifer, of the water story, because the last time I met with the Rinpoche there, they just completed the irrigation. It used to be a very dry town, and now it has a lot of water compared with other places, because they found an underground water source. Jennifer?
Oops, sorry, I don't know what happened.
I don't know either.
But let me get back to the screen. Sorry. I don't know. It must have been my Wi-Fi. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Get back to that. So
Tiksay is beautiful, and there's so many things to see. We'll approach each one of these monasteries going up and trying to get into the mindset of a pilgrim that would have been coming through.
Yeah. And
I can guide you through protocols, for how to be respectful in going through some of these shrine rooms and things like that. And we can talk about the deities and the long history of, Tibetan Buddhist iconography, and how it goes back to Indian Buddhism, prior to that Hinduism, and that sort of thing. And
yeah. Thank you. And then coincidentally, the organization that actually Laura works with, Lena, is also located in Tixay, and so we have a very full day in Tixay. And Laura, I'm going to chat about the work of Lena and the passion.
So after I retired from Siddhartha School as executive director, I started a company called Silk Road Spaceship, and we partner with Himalayan entrepreneurs. Generally, we focus on textiles, and the idea is to bring some of these textiles from Silk Road areas to a global audience with our e-commerce store. And Lena is a dynamic couple of sisters who started as young entrepreneurs, really took a lot of risks. There's a lot of pressure among young people to get government jobs from their families. And they decided, no, we want to help Ladakh and become more entrepreneurial. And they work with shepherds to revitalize the pashmina industry. Instead of shipping all of the gross product, the wool out to be milled, to be woven into scarves and shawls, actually keep that product here. And Ladakhis women are revitalizing a tradition of weaving and botanically dyeing pashmina and selling the products in Ladakh and to partnering companies like ours. So we're going to get to go to their studio in Tixay, which is beautiful, and actually have a whole afternoon where we have lunch and we learn about the process of weaving and actually get to dye some things with locally harvested flowers. And we'll get to visit with the women who are weaving and get to try our hands on looms. And I think it's going to be a fantastic day.
Yeah, it will be amazing. So it's a full day. We'll have lunch there at their location as well. So, and it is outdoors. I mean, we will be in monasteries. So I'll talk more about COVID protocols, but at least some of these activities are outside. So that day we'll be leaving Stoke the next day to go to Nurla. So we will have a farewell dinner with our Siddhartha School friends, either at the hotel, the Golden Retreat Hotel, or we've also done it at Angdu's home. So we'll see what we can cook up, one or the other. So the next day, we'll be traveling to Nurla, which is also known as Apricot Valley, where lots of beautiful apricots grow. And on the way, we probably will make another quick stop in Leh for any last minute shopping on the way, because we won't have another opportunity unless you're staying on to do like any shopping. So if there's something on your list that you didn't get, we'll take you back to Leh on the way. And then on the way there, the confluence of the Indus River and the Zanskar River is just a beautiful stop along the way, and it's just a beautiful drive to the valley from Leh. So we'll do that, and then Laura, I'm going to hand the mic over to you, because the rest of our time in Nurla is really exploring the cultural heritage through art, which similar itinerary to what we did in 2018.
Yeah, so when we're in Nurla, which is also known as Apricot Valley, that is where you've got this incredible algae complex of what some people have described as like Kashmiri influenced Buddhist painting, but it's all a part of what is claimed to be 108 original sites that were founded by Rinchen Zompo, the great translator, in the 11th century. And there are very few of these places that are still existing today, and Alchi is one of them. It is a UNESCO heritage site. There has been a lot of restoration done. And it's one of the only places where you can actually see a surviving example of the temple carving, the wood carving that you see on the right with that little door. And we will also go to the Saucepole Caves, which are a place that a lot of people don't know about, but some of these same artisans are said to have gone up into these cave areas and painted some really fantastic art from this period. And I'll be taking you through with an eye towards pointing out really that cosmopolitan spirit that I was talking about before, in terms of the iconography, in terms of the costume. And you can really appreciate the fact that when you see these things up close, just how focused on textiles they were, how, you know, a bodhisattva's, you know, hip wrap or dhoti or a queen's cape are so carefully painted with a very thorough appreciation and eye for textiles at the time. These were the most magnificent of products, and that this was all painted as a point, a destination point, both for blessing and also a destination point for traders. And the caves, I'm assuming from what I've been able to research, were a place where people were going on retreats and monks were going on retreat. But when you get up in these, you're like, how did they paint these things in such dark, you know, caves? It's really remarkable. And the last time we were there, we went up to the caves and then we went to Wanla, which is a small off the beaten path monastery, also purportedly from the same time period. And they were having a mandala, a sand mandala, being built by the local monks as a part of the Vairojana Tantra, which is the loosely translated as the Buddha of Light, who is the focal point of so many of the depictions at Alchi and in the caves. So it was interesting to see this living tradition of the sand mandala and the tantric practice happening for a group. And everybody in the village came out and they were very kind in letting us stay. And we spent the entire day there and just blew off the rest of the itinerary because we'd walked right into something very
special. That was very special. I didn't actually show any photos of the, was it the dissolution of the mandala or the building it?
So the morning, they kept saying, oh, we're going to dissolve it soon, please stay. And I remember, so I just kept advising people, and what was going to be soon wound up being all day. And then we walked down to the river with the school kids who came out from the local school and the older people, and the Rinpoche, you know, they collected all the sand, scooped it up, gave us pieces of the sand to take home with us as a blessing. And then they took the rest of it and did prayers and emptied it out into the water to symbolize impermanence and also to bless the environment. That's all together, environment, impermanence, everything. And it was incredible. But we also made Lama Yuru, which was the next part of our very packed day, a bit shorter, which everybody was fine with. And I encourage anybody who's going to be a part of it to appreciate that going to India is really about being fluid. You walk into things that you just don't plan for.
Wholeheartedly agree. Every time I've been to Ladakh, there's always been something special. First time I went, there was a Stoke Gompa was open, and all the villagers were just dressed in their finery. And that was not on our agenda. And we sat and did prayers with the whole village at the Gompa. So you never know what. So I just always say, let the country be your guide, and whatever happens, go with the flow.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Alchi obviously is another place that Laura, we'll spend a good day there as well, which part of the looking at all of the art, and another beautiful monastery in that era, and have lunch at Alchi Kitchen. I forgot to mention there will be a cultural dinner, which will be definitely part of the itinerary on the evening of the July 18th. We'll be bringing in some Ladakhi musicians and a speaker, hopefully from Lamo, and to talk more about some of the culture and art. So that whole second half of the trip will be focused on the art and cultural heritage. With that, for those folks who want to stay on, I didn't put an image of it, but I know Jeannie, you're thinking about Zanskar. I think Laura mentioned that, but we have some other options that I didn't put in this presentation, but we're building out the itinerary for Zanskar, Nubra Valley, actually, and then also Agra, Taj Mahal for those who have never been to India and want to go. We'll make sure you're comfortable, but you can't not go to India and visit that part if you're interested. So the next day, July 20th, those staying on in Ladakh will stay on, and those traveling back will go back to Delhi. We'll have a farewell lunch, and a lot of times people are just really processing the whole experience of being in Ladakh, and really want to have that time to yourself and reflection time and afternoon to kind of prepare to travel back home. A lot of the international flights are in the wee hours of the morning, so we'll have a hotel booked until midnight or so, depending upon what time your flight is. We get you an airport transfer for your flight back home. But we are also offering an optional visit to the Sikh Delhi's biggest Sikh temple, Gurdwara Bangla Sahib, and it's a beautiful temple in Delhi. So if it's not too hot and you're interested in doing that, we actually have gone and every day, like hundreds of people go in, and the temple feeds people, so you can actually volunteer. I don't know what things are like with COVID right now, if you're able to do that or not. I haven't actually investigated that, but just witnessing that. I did want to address COVID a little bit, and we want to be super mindful. Obviously, it's in our lives now. Even though you're vaccinated, we'll follow the country's mandates, but also probably be extra careful and have you bring some COVID tests to test before you travel. Or we're trying to keep a lot of things outdoors, but just being mindful of masking if you're going in a monastery or around elderly or others, just to protect both yourself and the local community. So we will talk more about these protocols in our pre-departure packet, but I just wanted to mention that as well. And next steps for booking the trip. Actually, I don't know if you all received the itinerary I sent, but there are these links in the itinerary as well. But there's a online, this whole itinerary is also online, but it's also in a PDF. So there's a booking page where you can sign up and you can click on the booking form, and in that online booking page, there's a place to make a deposit to secure your spot. And Laura and I will open it up for questions. I'm going to stop recording, but I just wanted to actually, I want to go back to one slide to show you the Uli that we missed. We're staying in Nurla, the ethnic resort. It's right on the Indus River. It's got actually a beautiful porch, and lots of apricot and apple trees. So it's actually a beautiful location with deluxe cottages. So it's the first solar powered tourism project in Ladakh as well. So it's got a very sustainable tourism initiative at that resort. And then in Stoke, I didn't put too many photos in, but we're staying at a home that was built by Ongdu, who's on the board, but it's or a retreat. It's next to his home. but a golden retreat. And we've had visitors stay here and have been really, really happy. It's a very authentic Ladakhi style home hotel. So those are the two properties. And then I'll talk a little bit about the visa application. You can do an online e-visa. It's $88. You pay online and you basically upload, we'll walk you through it, upload your all the information that you need, and then you get it back, approval back within a 24-hour period. So we'll have more of this information in a pre-departure packet for those who haven't gone through that. I actually have a 10-year visa, so I don't have to do that, but in my passport. But you can actually apply if you know you're going to go back for a longer visa. So with that, I'm going to stop recording.